Have you felt it yet? That strange pull away from everything loud, everything visible, everything that once made you feel alive? It is not depression, it is not withdrawal. It is something far older, far wiser calling you inward. As 2026 unfolds, you may notice that the achievements you once craved no longer satisfy you. The praise that used to fuel you now feels hollow. The busyness that proved your worth now exhausts your soul. Something inside you is ready to work differently, not to impress the world, but to build something the world has never seen you capable of. Jung understood this moment well. He wrote, "The shoe that fits one person pinches another. There is no recipe for living that suits all cases." And 2026 is asking you to stop following everyone else's recipe and to cook your life in complete darkness, tasting as you go, trusting the process no one else can see. This video is not about hustle. It is about withdrawal. Not the withdrawal of defeat, but the withdrawal of the blacksmith who steps away from the crowd to forge something unbreakable in the heat of solitude. If lately you have felt the urge to delete your updates, to stop explaining yourself, to work on something without anyone knowing, then you are not losing your way. You are finding it. Are you ready to understand why silence will be your greatest ally this year? Why visibility is draining your aliveness? Here is what nobody tells you about living your life publicly. Every time you share your process, you split yourself in two. One part of you does the work. The other part watches yourself doing the work, narrating it for an invisible audience. And that split, that constant self-observation, drains the very presence that makes the work meaningful. Psychologists call this meta-awareness, the ability to step outside yourself and observe your own experience. In small doses, it is useful for reflection. But when it becomes constant, when you are always thinking about how to describe what you are doing while you are doing it, you are no longer fully inhabiting your own life. You become a documentarian of your existence rather than the one living it. Jung believed that the soul requires undivided attention to do its deepest work. He wrote, "Your visions will become clear only when you can look into your own heart. Who looks outside dreams. Who looks inside awakes." But if you are constantly looking outside to see how your inside appears to others, you never truly look inside at all. You remain asleep to your own transformation, performing awakening instead of experiencing it. Think about the last time you did something creative, meaningful, or difficult without telling anyone. Do you remember how different it felt? There was a fullness to it, a quiet satisfaction that did not need validation to exist. That is the feeling of being fully present with your own experience. That is the state in which real transformation occurs. But most of us have forgotten what that feels like because we have trained ourselves to broadcast before we have fully lived. The musician who stopped recording, I knew a musician once, who documented every practice session online. She would set up her phone, record herself playing, add captions about her progress, her struggles, her breakthroughs. One day her phone battery died mid-practice, and she decided to keep playing anyway. 45 minutes later, she realized she had just experienced the most fulfilling practice session in months. She told me, "I didn't know how much energy I was spending on being watched until I wasn't being watched anymore. For the first time, I was playing music instead of playing at being a musician." That distinction is everything. When you work in silence, you are not pretending to be the person who does the work. You become the work itself. The energy that would have gone into presentation, into crafting the perfect post, into managing others' perceptions, now flows entirely into the actual task. And that concentrated energy creates results you did not know you were capable of producing. The hunger that cannot be satisfied. Visibility creates a hunger that can never be satisfied. The more you share, the more you need to share to maintain the feeling of being seen. It becomes a cycle where the work exists not for its own sake, but to generate content about the work. And in that shift, you lose touch with why you started in the first place. 2026 will belong to those who remember, those who can sit with their own process without needing to narrate it, those who understand that some things must be lived fully before they can be spoken about meaningfully. You do not owe the world real-time updates on your growth. Let them wonder. Let them ask later, when the transformation is complete and undeniable. Right now, your only responsibility is to be fully present with what is trying to emerge through you. If you continue to the next chapter, you will discover why silence does not just preserve your energy, it protects you from becoming a character in your own story instead of the author. When your identity becomes your prison, there is a moment in every transformation when you realize the person you have been showing the world is no longer the person you are becoming. And here is the painful truth. The more you have talked about who you are, the harder it is to become someone else. Because every public declaration of identity is a promise you made to others about who you would continue to be. Jung called this the tyranny of the persona. The social mask we wear becomes so convincing that even we forget it is a mask. He wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But becoming who you truly are requires killing who you have been pretending to be. And that death cannot happen on stage. It must happen in the darkness where no one is applauding, no one is watching, no one has expectations about who should emerge." How the trap closes. The performance trap is subtle. It begins innocently. You share a goal. People respond positively. You feel encouraged, seen, supported. So you share more. Each update deepens others' investment in your journey. They begin to expect updates. They ask, "How is that project going?" And suddenly, you are not working on the project for yourself anymore. You are working on it because you told everyone you would. The motivation shifts from internal to external. And when the external motivation weakens, the project dies, but it goes deeper than motivation. When you publicly commit to an identity, I am someone who wakes up at 5 a.m., I am a minimalist, I am becoming a writer, you create social pressure to perform that identity consistently. Any deviation feels like failure. So you continue performing the identity even when it no longer fits, even when your soul is trying to evolve past it. You become trapped by your own declarations. David's story, the productivity expert who fell apart. I met a man named David at a conference 3 years ago. He had built an entire online presence around being a productivity expert. Thousands of people followed his morning routines, his systems, his optimized life. But privately, he told me he was falling apart. He had become so rigid trying to maintain the image of the perfectly productive person that he had lost all joy in his work. He wanted to slow down, to explore, to be less systematic, but every time he tried, his audience would express concern. "Are you okay? This doesn't sound like you." So he would snap back into the performance, resenting it more each time. Only when David went completely silent for 6 months, no posts, no updates, no explanations, did he find space to dismantle the identity he had built. He said, "I had to disappear from everyone who knew the old me so I could discover the new me without their confusion becoming my confusion." When he returned, he was doing entirely different work, speaking in a different voice, living in a different way, and the people who truly resonated with him found him again. The others fell away. That falling away was not a loss, it was a liberation, the permission to disappoint. This is why 2026 demands silence from you, not because the world does not deserve your truth, but because you cannot discover your truth while maintaining an image for the world. There is a beautiful Zen saying, "Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water." The actions are the same, but the person doing them has transformed. That transformation cannot occur if you are constantly explaining to others that you are transforming. It can only occur in the privacy of your own becoming. When you work in silence, you give yourself permission to change directions without explanation. to fail without an audience, to try things that might not work, to be uncertain, confused, contradictory. These states are essential for genuine transformation, but they are impossible to inhabit when you are performing transformation for others. The most powerful thing you can do in 2026 is disappoint the version of you that others have grown comfortable with. Stop being predictable. Stop being the person they can describe in a sentence. Become so layered, so mysterious, so quietly evolving, that when they see you again, they realize they never actually knew you at all. They only knew the performance, and now the performance has ended. The real work has begun. And if you have felt that split, that sense of living for the story you will tell, rather than living for the experience itself, then perhaps you are ready for the next layer, where we explore how tiny, hidden actions accumulate into a self you could never have announced into existence. How invisible repetitions build indestructible foundations. Once you stop performing your transformation, you will discover something strange. The big, impressive changes you thought you needed to make do not actually change you. It is the small, boring, unglamorous actions repeated in absolute privacy that reconstruct your entire foundation. This is the secret that separates those who transform from those who merely talk about transformation. Jung understood that the unconscious does not respond to grand gestures. It responds to pattern recognition. He believed the psyche is shaped not by what we do once with great fanfare, but by what we do repeatedly when no one is watching. These micro-repetitions send signals to the unconscious. This is who we are now. Adjust accordingly. And slowly, quietly, your internal structure begins to shift. The misunderstood wisdom of Kaizen. There is a Japanese concept called Kaizen, which means continuous improvement through small changes, but the Western world has misunderstood it. We think Kaizen means optimizing and becoming more efficient. But in its truest form, Kaizen is about making changes so small that they bypass the ego's resistance. When you commit to writing one sentence per day, your ego does not perceive it as threatening. But over a year, that is 365 sentences. That is the beginning of a book. That is an identity shift from non-writer to writer that happened so gradually you never had to confront the fear all at once. The power of invisible repetitions lies in their accumulation. Water does not break stone through force. It breaks stone through persistence. The Grand Canyon was not carved in a day. It was carved by water flowing in the same direction for millions of years. Your transformation works identically. You do not need dramatic breakthroughs. You need direction plus time plus consistency. And those three elements only combine successfully in silence. The two marathoners. Consider the person training for a marathon. If they announce their training online, each run becomes content. They must photograph themselves, share their splits, update everyone on their progress. But the person training in silence simply runs. No photos, no updates, no validation. And that second person has an enormous advantage. They run for the sake of running. They develop an intrinsic relationship with the process. And when race day comes, they are mentally stronger because they have trained their mind to work without external reward. Sophia and the Spanish poetry. I once worked with a woman named Sophia who wanted to learn Spanish. For 2 years, she had tried every popular app, joined language exchange groups, posted about her learning journey, and never progressed beyond basic conversations. Then she tried something different. She stopped talking about learning Spanish and simply spent 15 minutes every morning reading Spanish poetry out loud to herself. No posts, no progress updates, no language partners, just her voice, the words, and the rhythm. After 9 months, she had her first completely fluent conversation with a native speaker. She said, "I did not learn Spanish by trying to learn Spanish. I learned it by spending time with the language when no one was watching." Building for structural integrity. That is the architecture of the unseen. You are not building for applause. You are building for structural integrity. And structures with integrity are not assembled overnight. They are laid brick by brick in sequences so slow and mundane that documenting them would bore everyone, including yourself. But that boredom is sacred. It is the boredom of real work, of repetition, that has no performance value but immense transformational value. Jung wrote, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. And one of the most common avoidances is replacing the work with the performance of work. When you show everyone you are working, you feel productive without producing. You feel accomplished without accomplishing. The invisible repetitions strip away that illusion. They force you to confront whether you actually care about the thing itself or just about being seen as the kind of person who does that thing, your hidden construction site. In 2026, your transformation will not announce itself. It will accumulate in the small rooms of your life where no light reaches from the outside world. 5 minutes of meditation before anyone wakes. 10 minutes of stretching before bed. 3 pages of writing no one will read. 20 minutes learning a skill you have not told anyone about. These moments do not generate content. They generate capacity. And capacity, not motivation, is what allows sustained transformation. The world celebrates finished products, but every finished product began as a daily practice that felt insignificant. The author did not become an author by finishing a book. They became an author through thousands of private hours with the blank page. The athlete did not become an athlete by winning a medal. They became an athlete through years of training sessions no one witnessed. You will not become your transformed self by announcing transformation. You will become it by showing up to the invisible repetitions until the repetitions have rebuilt you from the inside out. If these words have made you realize that your real work has been waiting for you in the places you have been too distracted to look, then leave a single word in the comments: building. Not as a promise to others, but as a reminder to yourself that transformation is constructed, not declared. And now, let us explore what happens when you build in silence long enough, when the forces inside you that have been sabotaging every effort finally reveal themselves. The inner adversary that only appears in solitude. But here is what no one warns you about when you commit to working in silence. The moment you remove all external validation, all distraction, all performance, you come face to face with something that has been hiding behind the noise your entire life. Jung called it the shadow. Others call it resistance, self-sabotage, or the inner critic. I call it the adversary, the part of you that would rather you stay small, comfortable, and safe than risk becoming something you have never been before. This is the layer most people never reach because they never create enough silence to encounter it. As long as you are busy posting, updating, and performing your transformation, the adversary stays quiet. It does not need to sabotage you because you are already sabotaging yourself through dispersion. But when you finally gather your energy, when you finally commit to working in sustained silence, the adversary wakes up. And it will use every weapon in your psychological arsenal to make you quit. The precision-targeted attack. It will tell you that you are not talented enough, that you started too late, that others are further ahead, that your work does not matter, that you should wait until conditions are perfect, that you are embarrassing yourself, that you will fail anyway, so why bother? These thoughts are not random. They are precision-targeted to the specific insecurities you have been carrying since childhood. The adversary knows you better than anyone because it is made from every moment you were hurt, rejected, or shamed. It is your accumulated fear crystallized into an internal voice. Jung believed that the shadow is not evil. It is simply the repository of everything you have disowned about yourself. But precisely because you have disowned it, you cannot control it. It controls you. It whispers to you at 5 a.m. when you are supposed to start working that you are tired, that you deserve rest, that you can start tomorrow. It whispers at midnight when you are about to finish that what you have made is worthless, that no one will care, that you should delete everything and start over. These whispers are not truth. They are survival mechanisms from a past self trying to protect you from the vulnerability of trying. Marcus in the exhibition that never happened. I knew a painter named Marcus who had been working on his first exhibition for 7 years. He had all the paintings, he had the venue connections, he had the skills, but every time he came close to setting a date, something would happen. He would decide the work was not ready, or he would get sick, or a crisis would emerge that demanded his attention. These were not coincidences. They were the adversary, creating emergencies to prevent the scariest moment, being seen. Only when Marcus stopped talking about the exhibition entirely and worked in complete silence did the pattern become visible to him. He realized he was not actually afraid of failure, he was afraid of success. Because if the exhibition went well, he would have to accept that he was actually a talented painter. And that acceptance would mean he could no longer hide behind the identity of someone who could be great if circumstances were different. He would have to step into accountability for his own potential. That terrified him more than failure ever could. The adversary's deepest trick. This is the adversary's deepest trick. It convinces you that you are afraid of trying and failing when you are actually afraid of trying and succeeding. Because success means change, and change means stepping into an unknown version of yourself. The adversary prefers the known. Even if the known is painful, at least it is familiar. Transformation is, by definition, unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity triggers every survival instinct your nervous system possesses. Silence is where you meet this force directly. When you remove all buffers, all distractions, all external validation, you sit with the discomfort of your own resistance. And this sitting is not passive. It is the most active thing you can do. You are not fighting the adversary. You are witnessing it. You are learning its language, its patterns, its triggers. And in that witnessing, you begin to separate yourself from it. You realize, this thought is happening, but I am not this thought. This fear is arising, but I am not this fear. Making the unconscious conscious, Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The adversary only has power when it operates invisibly. When you shine the light of awareness on it, when you name it, when you recognize its voice as separate from your own, it begins to lose its grip. You stop identifying with the sabotaging thoughts. You start observing them as weather patterns passing through your mind, and observation creates space. In that space, choice becomes possible. 2026 will demand that you face this adversary, not once but daily. It will appear every morning you sit down to work, every evening you resist scrolling, every moment you choose depth over distraction, and each time you notice it, each time you work anyway, you weaken its hold. Not through force, but through persistent presence. You cannot defeat the adversary, but you can outwork it. You can show up so consistently that the adversary realizes it cannot stop you and eventually goes quiet. The maturity to work while resisting. The people who transform are not the ones without resistance. They are the ones who learn to work while experiencing resistance. They are the ones who know the adversary's voice so well that they can say, "I hear you, and I am working anyway." That is not courage. That is maturity. And maturity only develops in the silence where the adversary has nowhere to hide. If you have recognized that voice in yourself, if you have seen how it has been steering your life from the shadows, then perhaps you are ready to understand the next layer, where all the energy you have been wasting on worthless battles finally gets redirected toward the work that will define your life. Gathering scattered power into a single stream, and once you begin recognizing the adversary, once you stop letting it derail you, something remarkable happens. You start noticing how much energy you have been hemorrhaging into battles that never mattered. Small arguments, defending yourself online, monitoring what others think of you, engaging with criticism from people who have never done what you are attempting, comparing your progress to others, reacting to every provocation. These are not minor leaks, they are gaping wounds through which your life force pours out daily. Jung understood energy as libido, not in the sexual sense, but as the fundamental psychological current that powers all human activity. This energy is limited. You do not have an infinite supply. Every reaction, every engagement, every emotional investment drains the reservoir. And when the reservoir is empty, you have nothing left for the work that actually matters. This is why so many people feel perpetually exhausted despite doing nothing of significance. They are spending all their energy on insignificant things. Closing the leaks. Silence is the act of closing these leaks. When you stop explaining yourself, you stop spending energy on justification. When you stop arguing online, you stop spending energy on conflict that yields nothing. When you stop tracking others' opinions, you stop spending energy on comparison, and all that conserved energy does not disappear. It accumulates, it concentrates, it becomes a force powerful enough to move mountains in your actual life. Think of it like this. Imagine you're trying to fill a bathtub, but there are a dozen small holes in the bottom. You can run the water as much as you want, but the tub will never fill because the leaks match the input. That is most people's energetic state. They are constantly trying to generate more motivation, more discipline, more drive, without ever addressing the fact that they are losing energy faster than they are generating it. But when you plug the leaks, when you practice rigorous silence, suddenly the same input fills the tub completely. You are not generating more energy. You are simply stopping the waste. Raj and the business that finally grew. I once knew an entrepreneur named Raj who could not understand why his business was not growing. He was working 12-hour days, constantly networking, always visible online. But every conversation was surface level. Every connection was transactional. Every post was reactive to industry drama. He was busy, but his energy was dispersed across 1,000 tiny engagements, and none of them were moving his actual business forward. Then he read something that changed everything. A single line from a Taoist text. The flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long. He realized he was burning bright for everyone else and burning out in the process. So he made a radical decision. For 6 months, he went completely dark. No social media, no networking events, no public visibility. He focused entirely on building one core product with absolute excellence. And when he finally emerged, that product was so undeniably good that customers found him. He did not need to market. The work marketed itself. He said, "I stopped trying to convince everyone I was successful and started actually becoming successful. And the difference was entirely about where I placed my attention." Attention is energy. Energy is finite. That is the consolidation of force. It is the recognition that attention is energy and energy is finite. Every place you give your attention, you give your power. Most people give their power to everyone except themselves. They are so busy responding to the world that they never get around to creating their world. But when you withdraw that power, when you pull all your attention back into your own work, your own growth, your own vision, something alchemical happens. You become dangerous, not in a harmful way, but in a potent way. You become someone who can actually execute, not just talk about executing. Jung wrote, "Where your fear is, there is your task." And for most people, the greatest fear is irrelevance. We are terrified that if we stop being visible, we will stop mattering. So we stay visible, we stay engaged, we stay performing. But that very fear keeps us irrelevant, because we are spending all our energy on visibility instead of substance. The people who actually become relevant are the ones who disappear long enough to build something so substantial that their relevance becomes inevitable. The choice you must make in 2026, you will need to make a choice. You can continue dispersing your energy across 100 minor engagements, staying visible but ultimately forgettable. Or you can consolidate your force. You can become ruthlessly protective of your attention. You can say no to everything that does not serve your deepest work. You can disappear from spaces that drain you. You can stop responding to provocations. You can let others misunderstand you. You can allow yourself to become a mystery to everyone except yourself. This consolidation will feel uncomfortable at first. You will feel the pull to engage, to respond, to stay relevant. Your nervous system has been trained to seek external validation. Breaking that training is like breaking an addiction. But on the other side of that discomfort is a version of you with access to power you have never felt before. Not power over others, but power over yourself. The power to direct your entire being toward a single point of focus and hold it there until the work is complete. A question to hold in silence. Before moving to the final chapter, I want you to consider this question. If you withdrew every ounce of energy you currently spend on things that do not matter and redirected it entirely toward the one thing that would change your life, what would that one thing be? Do not share the answer. Just hold it in your awareness. That holding is the beginning of consolidation. That silence is the beginning of power. Becoming unrecognizable in the dark, and when your force has finally consolidated, when you have stopped leaking energy and started gathering it, you will enter the most disorienting stage of all. Jung called it the chrysalis, the moment when you are no longer who you were, but not yet who you are becoming. You are formless, suspended in a dark space where nothing makes sense, where you cannot see the outcome, where you must trust a process that offers no guarantees. Most people never reach this stage because they cannot tolerate its uncertainty. They need to see progress. They need to measure transformation. They need to announce each milestone to confirm they are moving forward. But the chrysalis does not work that way. The dissolution that precedes flight inside the cocoon, the caterpillar does not gradually grow wings. It dissolves completely. Its body liquefies into a soup of cells that contain no recognizable structure. Only then, in that complete dissolution, can the butterfly's form begin to emerge. Your transformation will follow this same pattern. There will be a period where you feel like you are losing yourself, where your old identity no longer fits, but your new identity has not yet solidified, where you cannot explain to anyone what you are doing because you do not fully understand it yourself. This is not a sign that something is wrong. This is a sign that something is finally right. You are in the chrysalis. The dissolution is the transformation. Jung wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain, and the chrysalis stage is where that pain concentrates. You are letting go of everything you used to believe about yourself, every strategy that used to work, every identity that used to provide security, every story that used to make sense. You are becoming liquid so that you can reform into something entirely new. And that liquefaction is terrifying because you have no control over what emerges. Isabel's 8 months of nothing, I met a woman named Isabel who went through this exact process. She had spent 15 years as a corporate lawyer, building a career everyone admired. But at 40, she felt hollow. She realized she had been performing success rather than living meaningfully. So she quit. No plan, no next step, just a knowing that she could not continue. For 8 months, she felt completely lost. She would wake up not knowing who she was. She tried different things, nothing stuck. People asked, "What are you doing now?" And she had no answer. She said those months were the darkest of her life, not because anything bad was happening, but because nothing was happening. She was suspended in formlessness. But she did not try to rush it. She did not try to force a new identity. She simply lived in the question, who am I when I am not performing a role? And slowly, almost imperceptibly, a new form began to emerge. She started writing, not for publication, just for herself. Then she started teaching writing workshops for women going through transitions. Within 2 years, she had built an entirely new life, one that felt authentic in a way her old life never had. She said, "I had to become nothing before I could become something real." The gift and terror of surrender. This is the gift and the terror of the chrysalis. You must surrender control. You must accept that you cannot engineer transformation. You can only create conditions for it and then trust. And the primary condition is silence. You must give yourself permission to not have answers, to not explain yourself, to not perform coherence when you feel incoherent. The world will pressure you to make sense. You must resist that pressure. You must protect the formlessness until the new form is ready. There is a Sufi story about a man who visits a monastery and asks the master, "How do I find God?" The master points to a nearby tree that is completely bare. "Come back in spring," he says. When the man returns 3 months later, the tree is covered in blossoms. The master says, "That is how you find God. First, you must become winter." Most people want transformation without winter. They want to skip the stripping bare, the apparent death, the season of dormancy. But that is not how growth works. Winter is not the absence of life. It is life reorganizing itself beneath the surface. Your winter of becoming 2026 will be your winter if you let it. Not a winter of suffering, but a winter of becoming. A season where you give yourself permission to be undefined, unfinished, unrecognizable. Where you stop trying to maintain the old form and allow the dissolution that precedes all rebirth. This requires courage of a kind most people never access. Not the courage to act, but the courage to wait. Not the courage to speak, but the courage to remain silent. Not the courage to become something, but the courage to become nothing first. Jung believed the greatest act of individuation, of becoming a whole person, is accepting that you will spend significant periods not knowing who you are. "I am not what happened to me," he wrote. "I am what I choose to become." But that choice only emerges after a period of unknowing. You cannot choose the new self while clinging to the old. You must release into the space between, trusting that gravity will guide you to where you need to land. The emergence. When you finally emerge from this stage, and you will emerge, you will not recognize yourself. Not because you have become someone else, but because you have finally become yourself. The performance has ended. The pretending has stopped. The person standing there is the one who was always waiting beneath all the layers you accumulated to survive a world that demands conformity. That person is wilder than you expected, more honest, more powerful, more peaceful, more dangerous in the best possible way. 2026 will not announce your transformation. It will birth it in silence, in darkness, in the space where no one is watching and no one is waiting. And when you step back into the light, you will not need to tell anyone you have changed. They will feel it the moment you enter the room. Not because you are performing differently, but because you have stopped performing altogether. And the presence of someone who has stopped performing is so rare, so magnetic, so undeniable, that it requires no explanation. Conclusion. The invitation. This is the invitation, to disappear long enough to dissolve, to be silent long enough to reform, to trust the darkness long enough to become a new kind of light. If you are ready for that journey, if you feel the call toward your own chrysalis, then perhaps this is your year to stop showing the world who you are and start discovering it for yourself. When you look back at this entire journey, you will see something very clearly. Silence was never disappearance. It was the space where you quietly strengthened yourself, gathered scattered fragments of energy, and focused them into a single stream. Like an artisan working behind a closed door, you do not need to prove anything, do not need to answer anyone, do not need applause to know you are moving in the right direction. And then there will come a moment when you do not need to announce that you have changed. The way you show up will say everything for you. 2026 will be the year you stop running at other people's pace and build your own rhythm. Steadier, deeper, more rooted. The world may not see each day you worked quietly, but they will feel the new version of you when you step into the light with the calm presence of someone who has overcome themselves. If you wish to continue walking through powerful inner journeys like this, where every step comes from deep within, subscribe to the channel and share this video with anyone who also needs the reminder that sometimes the way you change your life is simply to be silent and begin the real work. You are not alone on this path. We will continue walking together.